Good morning, everyone. We will go ahead and get started with the November 23rd Transportation Policy Committee meeting. I want to thank everybody for attending. Nice show of people in person. We welcome you back. Some of us have been attending in person for a couple of months, and each month as we go along, we get more and more faces, and we appreciate that. We still have several online, but as a way of introduction, I think we're going to go kind of old school today, just kind of go around the room. We do have some new members from KIPTA staff here that some of you may not have met in person if you've been attending virtually, so that will give you an opportunity to put a name with the face and then possibly have conversation with them later. So I'll start out and we'll go this way and we'll work our way around the room. So I'm Kevin Beatty with the town of Clarksville.
Greg Burris, KIPTA.
Andy Rush, also with KIPTA. Nick Vale with KIPTA.
Valerie Moore with KIPTA.
Spencer Williams with KIPTA.
Elizabeth Park with KIPTA.
You're up, Mayor.
Bill Dare, Mayor of City of Jaytown.
Dirk Owen, local Metro.
Matt Menyea, City of Jefferson.
Bernie Bowling, Councilman, City of St. Matthews.
Byron Chadwick, Mayor of City of Jaytown.
David Burton.
Scott Martin, I'm your guest with Ward Park.
Thomas with KYTC Central Office.
Jared Haley with KIPTA.
Adam Forsett for KIPTA.
Gina Kane, KIPTA.
Aida Kopic with TARC.
Isidro Delgado, AYTC.
Beverly Chester Burton, City of Jackson.
Okay. For those people online, if you would like to introduce yourselves, we'd appreciate that as well.
Matt Bullock, KYTC District 5.
You want more tables?
Tracy Level, KYTC District 5.
Tom Hall, KYTC District 5.
Carly Metcalf, NDOT.
Looks like Nora Cott from Federal Highways Kentucky is also online too. Okay.
Yes,
Sure.
hello, Andy.
Hey Nora, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining.
All right, so we have taken roll. We do have a quorum. First thing on the agenda will be approval of the minutes as we've done in the past. If you make a motion in second, please state your name. We'll still continue since we do have people online. You can either say aye or raise your hand to approve, or say aye and raise your hand if you would choose to oppose when so called. So first item is the October 21st or October meeting minutes of the TPC. Need a motion in a second, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. Item 3 is public comment period. Greg.
We did not receive any public comments prior to the meeting via email, and I don't see any in the chat as of right now.
All right, thank you very much. Public involvement report. Stay with you, Greg.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Just want to go through the numbers for social media as well as our outreach efforts for the month of October. Good news is social media wise, Facebook and Instagram were both up. That was a good thing. Twitter stayed pretty strong. It was a little bit of a drop, but not bad from last month. Other good news is website visits are up as well. Our main page and our MTP page will saw a rise from last month. We also did get 9 new pin drops this month on our public application map. 3 of those came from an event from out at U of L that I'll get into just shortly. As I mentioned, we participated at University of Louisville Sustainability Day. Able to get some good comments there. Other things, we finished up our Amendment 5 to the MTP and TIP. Nick will have a little bit more on that, but just the general strategy-wise of that, we did receive 14 comments, 39 likes. That's a really good ratio. We only had 8 projects in that. We had a lot more likes than we did for Amendment 4. Difference was pretty good. We held a public meeting on November the 1st, advertised in newspapers, business association, chamber newsletters. We delivered flyers to all within the NPO. Social media campaign saw almost 2,000 impressions. That's again another increase from Amendment 4. So that's another good sign that our message is getting out there. Email campaign numbers were pretty similar. We saw 300 unique clicks, 649 opens for over 2,000 recipients. Public comments, as I mentioned, we went to U of L. Basically, we handle things a little differently than we normally do when we're at events. We talked to the students. We said, how do you get to campus, and with something, what would change for you to pick your choice? So if you drive, you need something to kind of make a difference. Got some really good answers. A lot of people take advantage of the TARC service that's over at Cardinal Stadium. We also heard a lot of students just said that they just feel safer if there were more bike lanes, they would bike more. Electric bikes were also a mention. People did say they took the bus as well. Some people just mentioned distance. They just said it was too far, just didn't have the TARC routes to enable to get there on time to campus. But most it was probably split when we talked to probably 60-40, 50-50 of people that drove compared to people that also biked and took the bus. So that was a good ratio, I thought. As I mentioned, we also did get 6 other comments on our public application map. Some really good ones. People mentioned that I-265 and the Billtown exits. They spoke that it's difficult to make a left on the Billtown. They'd like to see a roundabout there. Somebody also mentioned they'd like to see reconnect Preston at Preston and Burnett for pedestrians and cyclists. Taylorsville Road and South Hope Lick Road. Somebody mentioned that they wanted a roundabout as well. There was a comment about connecting J-Town to the parklands, prioritize walking and biking on the corridor. And somebody else also wanted a road diet on Lynn Station to accommodate bike lanes, slow speeding cars. Be a great connection from the residential to commercial. Basically wraps up my report. If anybody has any questions, I will take them, but that wraps up.
Any questions or comment for Greg? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 5. This is an amendment to Connecting Kentucky Anna 2040 MTP and the fiscal year 2025 Transportation Improvement Program.
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you, everybody. Sorry.
You were going.
I jumped through over here, if you don't mind. I saw the cameras posted up here, so I wouldn't interfere. So Amendment 5, there's not a whole lot of projects in it, but there are a few that I think Greg, we're just going to pull up the map for me. Basically, Amendment 5 was an expedited amendment. All of these projects are considered exempt from air quality standards. And so that kind of allows us to expedite.
Hold on a second. There we go. Sorry. There we go.
Yeah. So thank you, Greg. Yeah. Amendment 5 includes, it's really technically about 5 projects, but there's 8 total. What we're doing with a few of these, there's a project out in Southern Indiana. We're just basically removing a project from the MTP and TIP. And anytime we do that, it has to go through this amendment process. We've also got projects out here. That map is pretty blurry, but wow. Out here in Oldham County, one of the things they're doing is a bike and pedestrian trail. And so they've had a master plan that runs probably 8 to 10 miles. And so one of the things they're doing is kind of segmenting minor phases that they can complete at a time. So one of the ones that's going to be built probably sooner rather than later is a section along 393 near Buckner. And then likewise, Louisville Metro is breaking out the Ohio River Valley Louisville Loop segment into 2 smaller pieces. And those, one is going to run from the Big 4 Bridge to the Caperton Swamp, and the other one is in and around the East End Bridge and Prospect. And so basically we're just separating out these smaller segments from the larger kind of master project. In both of those cases, they're all bike ped projects. And then finally, down in the University of Louisville area, we were just talking about that. The university is working with KYTC and actually TPC awarded funds to this project you see here on the left-hand side. They are proposing some bike and pedestrian improvements, basically try to slow traffic down a little bit where the pedestrians cross 2nd and 3rd Street. So we're separating that project from the older Floyd Street roundabout. Those projects were kind of joined together. We're separating those out because obviously the roundabout's been completed for some time now. So those are the kind of 4 or 5 project changes that are included in Amendment 5. Again, because this is an air quality exempt amendment, there is no federal review. Federal review for amendments only comes into play when we have a non-exempt project, a project that may be adding capacity to the network, adding a travel lane, that sort of thing. And so because of that, immediately after this meeting, we'll be able to send this amendment off to NDOT and KYTC so they can move forward. So project sponsors can move forward with their projects. Again, Greg mentioned the public comments we received. There was no air quality conformity. I can't think of anything else that we need to cover on this one, but I can definitely answer any questions or comments if you have them.
Any questions for Nick?
And we do have 2 separate actions. The first being to request TPC approval of Amendment 5 to the Connecting Kentuckiana 2040 MTP.
So you want to handle these separately?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I need a motion and a second to approve Amendment 5 to the 2040 MPP.
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That item is approved.
The second request is for TPC approval of Amendment 5 to the 2020 to 2025 Transportation Improvement Program.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on approving the Transportation Improvement Program. Any further questions? All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye. All those opposed? That item is approved as well. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Item 6 in your agenda is the KIPTA participation plan update, and I'll turn it back to Greg.
Thank you all. Just wanted to let you all know that we are updating our participation plan. So many changes in how we do meetings, just like this, virtually, hybrid. There were a lot of new languages we needed to put in. We wanted to also simplify some things as well. So I sent the attachment along. That is a draft participation plan. We're going to be taking it out to the public in mid-December. Hopefully we'll have it for your all's approval and have the comments to you all before the February TPC. I'm asking for action just to approve that, to take it out to the public from you all, but I will obviously take any questions or anything if I has any on the participation plan.
So the plan was presented to you in your agendas. It's located as agenda item number 6 in your packets if you're here today. Any questions of Greg on this item? So Greg is requesting that we approve and open the 45-day public comment period. They will bring it back then in February with updates for us. So need a motion and a second if I could, please.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That item is approved. Item 7 on the agenda, NGO dedicated funding programs. Nick.
Yes, thank you all. Last month, I presented a similar item to you all, our regular quarterly update on the NPO dedicated programs, included a lot of phase shifts and cost increases. Since that meeting, a couple things have occurred that I needed to bring to your attention and ask for approval. One is a cost increase for Jeffersontown's Waterson Trail Phase 2 project. They needed about $60,000 more federal dollars for the right-of-way phase on that project. So we did receive that cost increase, and we have the funds available in the cost increase reserve to cover that. The bigger situation and the more significant portion of this item is Bridge 51 in Floyd County. Previously, there was a delay with Bridge 51 about 9 months ago, and there has been another delay on the reconstruction replacement of that bridge, essentially. So about 3 weeks ago, Floyd County, who's the project sponsor, this bridge crosses Silver Creek, separates Clark and Floyd County and New Albany and Clarksville for some context. Floyd County is the sponsor. They found out from the State Highway Preservation Office, SHPO, that there would be a significant amount of archaeological work that needs to be done prior to approving any environmental documents. That is probably going to cause about a 15 to 18 month delay, so almost 2 years. And so because in Indiana, we cannot carry over funds from one year to another, we can definitely move the phases as they want. They want to move the right-of-way phase from fiscal year 2022 to 2024, and then the construction phase from 24 to 26. And we can definitely manage all of that financially. The issue that we're kind of running into is that in fiscal year 2022, we now have about $800,000 in change that is unprogrammed. So we don't have a project for that in Indiana. And obviously in Indiana, the fiscal year ends in June, but they really close things down May 1. So I'm not asking for action on this item, but I want you to know that we are having a sort of mini call for projects, so we can find some home for these funds so that we don't lose them, because if we don't obligate them, or if sponsor doesn't obligate them, those will go back to the state of Indiana and we will lose those funds. So we've been talking with the project sponsors. We've been meeting with them regularly. We're going to meet with them. Andy and I are going to meet with them again next week and see what kind of projects we can maybe fit in there and get obligated in time. But I just want to let you all know that we are working on that. But the specific request today is just to approve the cost increase for J-Town and the phase shift for Bridge 51. So I can take any comments or questions.
Any questions for Nick on this item? Seeing, hearing none, need a motion and second to approve the changes as presented.
Second.
Motion second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. That item is approved.
Thank you all.
Kite award. Great.
So we are announcing today our 2021 Kite Award winners. I had really a great amount. It's 7 total. It's 7 nominees on projects. They were pretty good. After discussions with the staff and Mr. Beatty, we were able to include a winner for this year. I wanted to just announce that the 2021 winner is the Northeast Louisville Loop Middletown Eastwood Trail Section 1. Congratulations, Louisville Metro. This project connects is a multi-use path for bike and pedestrians. It'll eventually connect into the Louisville Loop and down to Beckley Creek Park. But as you can see from the photos, it's a nice use path for both bike and pedestrians to use along Shelbyville Road, Beckley Station. I'll put that a little bit out of the way there so you can see the photos. But I'm going to say congratulations. I don't know if Andy has anything to add or Mr. Bay, but very happy to present this award.
This is a well-deserving project that is, once that connection is made, it's going to be a tremendous connection. It's going to connect one of several connections, I guess. There's many parts of the Louisville Loop, and this is just but one. But we've had a lot of good high quality projects this year, and I think next year we're going to have even more. It's going to be a big construction year, so I look forward to not on next year 2022 award. We will have maybe a record year, I think, in terms of not only the number but the quality of projects. But this one is well deserving, and we appreciate Louisville Metro continued support on these types of projects, and we're happy to award this to Mr. Bowen. We got a trophy and everything, so thank you.
it'll be nice to let you hold the plaque for the rest of the meeting, but then we'll take it back and we'll represent it at the board.
We will, we'll do that too. We might reassess it.
Damn, I didn't want to go forward.
When Andy gave me a call and we were talking about the projects, a lot of it came down to, we had a lot of projects that are on paper. They haven't come to construction yet. I think there was one that was under construction, and then we had one or two that were completed with construction. And so after discussions, it's kind of like, okay, we give an award to a project that's on paper, but what happens if it doesn't come to fruition and doesn't get constructed, and we give an award? So we kind of narrowed it down to projects that they completed. But as Andy stated, busy construction year next year, so we're going to have a lot more physically completed projects to review next year. A lot of those that you saw that were listed there will probably get nominated again for next year, or maybe even the following year for the same award. So
Is it official? Is it officially open?
Yes.
Okay, just checking, because I know it's been.
And they're building
mostly
two
open.
right now. So.
Good deal.
all right. Quickly moving on into the agenda. Item number 9, Origin Park Master Plan. Andy?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Kevin. Today, as a guest speaker, we've got Mr. Scott Martin. Scott is the Executive Director of the River Heritage Conservancy. Am I saying that correctly? Correctly? Yes, and the River Heritage Conservancy is a nonprofit that is looking to develop what is going to be a big deal for our community here, the so-called Origin Park. Origin Park is not too far downstream from where Bridge 51 is along Silver Creek. So it's tying in New Albany and Clarksville, Clark County and Floyd County. So we're pleased to have Mr. Martin here to kind of educate us about the Origin Park, and floor's yours.
Cool, thank you for the invite. It's neat to see some old friends here that I worked with at the Parklands Project and other friends from Louisville. So now we're going to switch gears and switch to new friends like Kevin Beatty on the sunny side of the Ohio River. I also have to say how nice it is to talk to an honestly regional planning association. The big question I always get, and it's a big narrative that fits this project and a lot of work we do, is linking together Southern Indiana and Louisville and figuring out the right vocabulary to use depending upon who you're talking to for the funding you need to accomplish stuff. So it's great to talk to a big group. To keep things simple though, I'm probably going to say Louisville a lot without saying Southern Indiana, because I view the region as one metropolitan area. And that's how the rest of the nation views us as well. So Kevin, I hope you're gracious enough. Some Hoosiers, I get a little pushback when I say those things. So then I quickly come behind and say, well, Louisville, Kentucky is the second largest city in Indiana. And it makes them feel better. But that's how we get through this stuff. So I'll run you all through it. I'm going to go macro. I'm going to go really fast, as is my style, and then leave plenty of room for questions and comments and touch points later, and then give you follow-up connections. This is an outgrowth of the thinking behind the Parklands. Really the big global view is we're going to be a global community going forward, made up of cities, less than rural areas. The Louisville area at 1.2 million is in a really big sweet spot. Most of the growth we're seeing globally in cities is in the 1.2 to 1.6 million population range. It's not New York and the Sydney and Tokyo, actually. It's communities like ours. Now, as that grows, there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. And what we want to do is pitch our community as a winner. So the area we're working on is what we call the dark spot. A little difficult to see with the lights now. But if you know, when you fly into Louisville at night, you do that. If you're flying out of Atlanta like we all are, or Charlotte, because when we die, we go through one or the other. And you make this big sweeping turn over St. Matthews, you come over Jeff and over Clarkson, you do that approach down into Louisville, and you're on the right-hand side of the plane. If you look out, you'll see this black spot. And it's kind of an interesting deal because when I look at the top 50 metro areas of the United States of America, by most measures, this is the largest section of undeveloped land in the center of any major metro area. It's all encompassing about 2,500 acres. Now, how we got there is every bad land use thing you can imagine is a river that will not behave no matter what the Corps of Engineers says. The Ohio River is the boss. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. And a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, what we've got is an opportunity to have our wildest area that's 20 minutes from 1.2 million people. Seattle doesn't have this opportunity. Denver does not have this opportunity. We have it. And it's a completely untapped and unutilized resource. How many of y'all have visited the Falls of the Ohio? How many of you have visited it more than once? the hands, they generally go down. Y'all are overachievers. You blew my point. Thank you very much. So we want to say, how do you activate and how do you program this thing? So we want to elevate that forgotten landscape that a lot of people don't know. And y'all know it's the Falls of Ohio. It's the only reason any of us are here. But the stories of this land are rich, and it is all about transportation, and it always has been. When we began this work, we understood the falls, but we didn't know it as well as we possibly should have. It is the site of the Bison Crossing. It was one of the traces. Buffalo Trace exists as a reason. This was one of the big places the bison would move across the Ohio, where they would summer in Illinois and Wisconsin, and then winter in Kentucky and Tennessee. So you would have had millions upon millions of bison moving across here, but it wasn't just bison. It would have been elk. It would have been wolves. It would have been grizzly bears. And this isn't that far back in time. 1491 is the window we're looking at when all this stuff was happening here. So this idea of you have to go to Yellowstone to see the outdoors is not true even remotely. And if you get a wildlife biologist drunk, they will tell you, and you ask them the great question that we ask all of them, what would you want to see in the United States pre-settlement? Most of them will say the Falls of Ohio, because you would have had everything. Now, when I say everything, that also connects to transportation and vectors as well, because food sources were coming across the Ohio here, and paddlefish and critters were moving up the Ohio. The Falls of Ohio was essentially Kroger. So we met with the Smithsonian, and they told us the most densely populated area they believe east of the Mississippi, 1491, was a section down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and then the Falls of the Ohio. Now it's hard because they didn't do censuses, whatever it is. But 1491, 1492, someone say the rhyme, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, introduced smallpox, influenza. They vectored up. We all know the word disease vectors now more than we ever wanted to, but they vectored up the Ohio. And the estimate right now is somewhere between 3 and 5 million people died between 1492 and 1550. And that means all of the stories that we had here that defined our downtown core were vamoosed. And then we all learned the story of Daniel Boone coming across the Wilderness Road and the dark and bloody ground of Kentucky, right? That's the story I grew up being taught. Well, what they were fighting over is new land because it had just been evaporated. I set all of that up to tell you the depth of story on this site and the depth of story in your community, I didn't appreciate. And it's every bit as rich as the Aboriginal story in Africa or in Australia. It's every bit as rich as anything you'll find in the Columbia River Gorge. So what we want to do is we want to honor that and play with that and move it up. Also on transportation, the Falls of Ohio was a crossing point on the Underground Railroad, another incredibly powerful story. And obviously, this isn't Williamsburg or Jamestown. There are no structures left from the Underground Railroad. These are stories that we lost, but we've been meeting with the Underground Railroad Museum and the Harriet Tubman Center. And they've been telling us, here's how we tell these stories, because the 1830 dam across the Ohio at the Falls would have been a transport site for what they called cargo, which were human beings seeking freedom and escape from bondage. Because if you're on Kentucky, your own property, conceptually in Indiana, you're a free human being with fundamental rights. And we don't know a count there, but we know that the site that on Origin Park was, again, the origin of freedom for a lot of different folks. Another deeply American story that we lose, but we have a chance to bring to life within 20 minutes of 1.2 million people. And then y'all know the story of industrialization and then the story of the 37 flood, which is how we got to where we are today. This is the 37 flood at peak. Our project site is essentially the yellow area here, where the levee was built around 600 acres on the Ohio. And that's the project area I'm going to talk to you about now. A little layer of tragedy with these levees. And apologies, but you're getting a little bit of a high school history class now. Where all the levees were built, not only in southern Indiana, but Louisville, they were generally borrowed from river bottoms. And in our site, they were borrowed from this area right here. What that meant is those were Native American remains. And if you dig into any levee in our city, you're going to find Native American artifacts, bones, and remnants because they were stolen from this site. These were Native American mounds before that happened in 1937. So we've got a depth of story here, and it gets really, really substantive very, very quickly. I've had a great fortune to work on a lot of park projects around the nation. And I'll tell you all this without blinking. This is the most significant historical site and cultural site I will ever work on. And the challenge is that all the stories I just told you don't come with structures and buildings and the things we usually attribute to history. We have to find these stories, elevate them through design. And then it does connect to transportation because this is all about the movement of people, either moving to seek freedom, moving to survive as our Native American tribes and First Nations and elders, whatever it is, it's all about motion. So we play a giant what if game. And we want to work at the scale of the problem for this urban area and tell the story. So we all go back to Frederick Law Olmsted in our community. And this is the big idea. And this touches your work, and your work inspires us and really drives our success. We see our community living in a concentric series of loops. And I probably could have even pushed this a little bit further north. But we see this park as finishing a gap that will tie together the Louisville Loop, the original Olmsted Loop, the system of the parks and the parkways, and then one that's really driving a lot of our thinking now, this fun, really sharp, tight, dense urban loop in our urban core that knits together all of our communities in a tight 10-kilometer loop. And we think this park has a big role to play in doing that, because it can complement Waterfront Park on one end by giving an anchor on the other, lifting the neighborhoods. And I know everyone's looking at this link. If we're going to come back to that, hold that thought. But this is how we see it coming together. So Portland and West Louisville connect to New Albany, connect to Jeff, connect into Old Louisville, our downtown area. And we see these two anchor parks doing what a lot of parks in Portland, Oregon are doing now, where you have to have attractions on either end. And this is the big idea. What's really fun about it is Olmsted wanted to build a park over here. When he built Shawnee, he has writings where he talked about wanting to do a park in southern Indiana to mirror it. So we're kind of playing in that space, which is the most terrifying, godforsaken place you want to live in, when Olmsted said you should do something, and then you try to do it if you're taking your work seriously. So the what if becomes how our shorelines unite us and no longer divide us. This is the park site, and this is how we see it unify us. Downtown Louisville on that upper right-hand side, y'all see there. Jeff, Clarksville, New Albany, 24,000 people live within a 10-minute walk of this site because of the work in Clarksville and southern Indiana with the Greenway and Discovery Trail and the Heritage Trail that they have. They're already connection points that are ready to tap in for these walkable neighborhoods with affordable housing. This isn't about gentrification. It can't be. This has to be that crazy idea that if I have a middle-class life and a middle-class job, I can have a great world-class park next door. It shouldn't just be reserved for the wealthy. That's the small d democratic push, because these are already built neighborhoods with charming arts and crafts style houses, bigger lots, and walkable density. And the charming point of all is they're about a 20-minute bike ride to downtown Louisville across the bridges. And got another bridge in mind too. So that's the big idea, plopping this thing in and reshaping the relationship between the river. Any questions on the map before I switch to this one? So our next what if is, what if we use nature to aid resilience? I don't know how much time y'all spent on this map, but if I could implore any elected leader that is running a city on the Ohio River, I would have this on their desk. This is from the United States Corps of Engineers, noted tree huggers and climate activists. And they were asked to say, what does climate change mean for our community? And they did the study in 2016. The conservative projection, and I'm not showing you all the time sequence, is that there's going to be 30% more water in the Ohio in 50 years than there is today on average. 30%. And we just built a soccer stadium on the west side of the levee, which I think is going to be a wonderful aquatic swimming facility in a few years. But so this is reality. And my board is very politically conservative. But the point they've taken and the guidance they gave us is it's a business problem. We're going to have more water in the Ohio. What does this mean? How do you develop a park that's going to flood more? And that became the big takeaway for us. And Mr. Beatty and I have spent a lot of time in meetings talking about what this means for homeowners. If we don't maintain flood standards, then you lose your home insurance and all the different relationships there. So we lean into this. On our site, it gets a little bit even more challenging. We did projections on what climate change means on shoreline erosion. First time we've ever done the high-level HEC-RAS data on this. The dark red shows you worst case scenario if nothing is done on the shoreline to stabilize it and what it means for the banks. You don't know the site, but I can tell you right now, landfill, cultural sites from Shawnee, Iroquois, pre-Mississippian culture, super fun site. The river will start cutting into. So the question isn't, oh my gosh, can we just kind of sit on our hands and do nothing? The question becomes, this is going to happen. How do we prevent it, build a park, and allow it to shape our community? So that became one of our big tasks moving in. So we designed a park that can flood, the first one of its kind in the Midwest. You're watching this video as the Ohio River is brought into the park intentionally, so we don't close it off. And this is the first time we've designed an amphibious park in the middle part of America or the upper South, a park that does not freak out when it floods, a park that does not freak out when Jim Cantori shows up from the Weather Channel, and a park that doesn't have to put cones and barriers up. And this is front end work. We've taken Sandy lessons, Katrina lessons, and deployed them here within the site. So this whole thing is designed to be a sponge, a very helpful sponge. It's not going to solve all the problems of the world. It's 600 acres. The Ohio River at flood, if you don't know, today it's flowing at about 100,000 cubic feet per second. flood goes to 1 million cubic feet per second. So we're not going to solve all the problems, but we can do a Hippocratic oath and do no harm and stabilize these shorelines and be somewhere you visit, because floods are pretty doggone exciting. I don't care if you have an 8th grade education or a PhD. I watch everyone in this community show up at the river to watch it flood and watch West Virginia float by. It's a lot of fun to watch cows float by. I get it. And you know what? That's as much a part of living on a major river as living in the Rockies and watching a blizzard come. This is something that happens every year. Let's celebrate and lean into these wild systems because we're going to get more and more of them. So it's the first flood adaptive park designed in the upper Midwest and the South. So what that means for programming is we have a park that lives in different seasons. What I'm showing you now is the park when it is flooding. You'll be able to paddleboard through the woods underneath your trails that you'll hike when it's dry, because there's no current back in here. So if you've been to Florida and seen the mangroves, this is what you'll be able to do. And we're leaning forward on the Ohio's future. The Ohio is getting cleaner. It's cleaner today than it was 20 years ago. It's going to be cleaner in 20 years. I'm an optimist on that. I think it's going to do what the Rhine and Rhone have done in Europe for the last 75 years. You went back to those 75 years ago, they were absolutely trashy, messy, polluted messes. They're now so much better than they were. The Ohio is on the precise same trajectory. So we're leaning into a future of the Ohio that's cleaner and healthier, and we're okay with getting you around and through it. I'm not saying dump your head in it tomorrow, but we're going to lean into some optimism there, and it becomes a flood that moves up and down with it. Our next what if is stuff y'all know all too well, which is the landfills and land use. It's just a wreck back there. It's throwaway land, just like, and that's not unique. Every city on any major river, you got to get rid of something. Where do you do it? You push it into the river. You push it on the other side of the levee and then forget about it. This site has been, as far as I can tell, plowed, timbered, dug, borrowed, dumped, poisoned, refilled. Everything that can happen has happened here. It's as bad as Waterfront Park in some respects, in some respects it's not, but it's a site of incredible environmental injustice because these neighborhoods never had the political muscle to say no. They have absolutely been just the recipients of bad land use decisions because it goes to poor neighborhoods. But we can turn this around and recover it. And the town of Clarksville is being so helpful, helping us advance that and turn those landfills into lawns and meadows like you see there. Our next what if is what if we tell that 12,000 year story I told you before. This is driving our thoughts on interpretation because Lord knows it can't be someone that looks like me that tells you the history out there. I got no business doing that. So what we're going to do is bring artists in of every cultural background possible with a connection and lift the stories of this site. Right now, y'all may know the George Rogers Clark cabin. If you've been there, it's no longer with us. That's a one-note story that's told there. So we're out there meeting, just backstory. We're out there meeting with the Shawnee tribe, the chief. And let me just frame the Shawnee chief for you real quick. Super cool dude, drives an F-350, is the biggest Oklahoma State football fan you'll ever meet, okay? So let me just set this for you. And I'm out there doing what I thought was a very sensitive and thoughtful exploration discussion of George Rogers Clark and the settlement of Indiana. And I haven't had someone grab my wrist like that since my granddad did. And that chief grabbed my wrist and said, Scott, I know you're trying, brother. Can I give you a new word? Can I encourage you to consider the word invasion rather than settlement? That's when you have to step back and you have to go, whoa, there's a lot more going on here. And that was a pretty profound moment for me. So this site is going to be asked to carry those stories. And we're working with the tribes to be able to tell those stories. There are 11 tribes with connections to this land. The Delaware tribe was forcibly located on the steamships and moved to Oklahoma from this site. These are American stories that we just don't know. So we'll do that. We'll use big meadows, big placements on dealing with floods because the site is going to do a lot of this. And you've got to respond thoughtfully. And that is a City of Louisville logo because it has been a dumping site for the City of Louisville for many years as well. And we'll come back in on these brown fields and we'll use meadows. We use meadows for two reasons. One, I'm cheap and we have no money. They're easy solution. And you got to be realistic. Two, the last thing our community needs is another park with 8 billion acres of fescue and bluegrass that has to be cut. We're good. Trust me on this. We're good. We're not very good on these large urban habitat pieces. So we want to bring these in as well because they help heal the soil and give us a different voice. We've got to make wellness easier. There, but for the grace of God in Mississippi, we have some of the worst health statistics in the nation. And the argument, y'all have heard me, I know the mayor of J-Town's heard me say this when we did the Parklands. My argument's never been that Louisville is particularly unfit because we just enjoy eating more than people in Boulder. My argument is we're unfit, and I know Dirk agrees with this, because we haven't built systems that allow people to be active. We haven't thought through a lifetime of trails and connections. We haven't built the access. So this attempts to do it. There are 22 miles of trails in here. here's the big takeaway on this image and why I use this image. Notice how this is elevated. I love the Ohio River Greenway. There's a fundamental flaw buried in the Ohio River Greenway through our site. It's going to flood pretty frequently. And if we want to deliver that service to folks that live in New Albany and Clarksville as a transportation corridor, it can't be allowed to flood and be out of service for that long. We elevate it, we relocate it, we elevate it for that, but also because you need that peanut, that thing in the bottle, in the box of Cracker Jacks you go looking for. When someone comes to Louisville to visit friends, I want them to have to come out here and see this elevated walkway over the river and get a taste of the flavor as well, while we have functionality. Life lesson from the Parklands for me that I'll never make that mistake again. The Louisville Loop, as it goes over those leaping deer bridges in the Parklands, which we love so much and cherish so much, a learning from that, we didn't build enough space off where people could just get out of the path there and watch and look at the river without being run over. So anywhere we cross water, we've added a secondary deck so people can get out of the way and just sit and take in the view as well. That's just one of those lessons you learn over time. The next what if I'll leave with you is about rewilding our urban core. And this is a big piece. Look, we don't need another waterfront park in this community. We don't need another amphitheater. We're good. What we had to ask is, what does our community need? And when we dug into our site, this is the personality that began to come up to us. Our biologists found over 180 bird species on the site over 6 months in a landfill. So we got really excited about the biodiversity piece and got really excited because, if I may, these urban foxes are really actually more important in some ways than the fox out in the country. Because how many kids will get a chance to see this fox and it'll be their first fox encounter? So we want to provide the space for that so that if you walk out of your house in our community, you can have an absolutely wild experience. And so the whole personality of our park, with the flooding I mentioned earlier, you're going to see us lean very hard towards wildlife. And by doing so, the big critique on our park that we're going to get when it's done is from Joe Q six pack is going to be, they'll go out there and they'll visit and they'll say, I don't have any idea how they spent $200 million here. It looks all natural. That will be the best compliment we could possibly get because we're going to provide habitat for these critters to do what they need to do. And these are just some of the species we found in the 600 acres right here in the center of our community full of landfills. The big surprise to me were the flying squirrels, the southern flying squirrels. We didn't expect to find them. And our biologists found them at night. So by doing the elevated bridge into the trees, I can't guarantee you'll see them, but man, we're going to set it up so you have a good chance of seeing them. It's cut off here, but you all know the neotropical birds, the indigo buntings down here, the tanagers up here. That's spectacular. And like globally spectacular. These are our wildebeest and they move through here, but they don't come to your feeder. They're not going to. So what we have to do is bring people to these moments to see them. Because once they do, I know they'll think I live in a pretty doggone special place. And maybe they'll slow down a little bit. So the park is aimed at elevating your chance to see all of these different species. If y'all don't know this one, that's a paddlefish. When we started this project, there were 2 species of paddlefish on the planet, the Chinese paddlefish and the American paddlefish. These are species that lived before the dinosaur, after the dinosaur, and the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. The Chinese paddlefish was declared extinct last March. The last species on the planet of paddlefish is found in the Ohio River here. And thank goodness it is, because we have the competence in this country to protect it. Thank goodness it's not found in a developing nation with limited resources. But that paddlefish is really the biggest fish naturally in the Ohio River, that and the sturgeon. And that's what would have, before carp, would have made about 90% of your biomass here. Fun fact with the sturgeon, 1917, when the Reds took over in Russia, the American caviar market vanished. Well, someone, an intrepid, I mean, I'm just trying to picture the guy who thought, I'm going to taste a paddlefish egg. But someone, a Clarksville resident, decided to do that and created the first paddlefish roe processing plant in America in Clarksville in our site. And it became a replacement for caviar. And you can still get it today. There's a plant in Owensboro producing it. So I don't know if you're into caviar. If you are, try paddlefish roe. I've heard. I don't have the palate to manage either one of those. We're on the flyway I mentioned for the bird life. And just to give you an idea of the scale, back to birds real quick, this is radio transponder information of one night of bird migration. The brighter colors tell us what's going on. The estimate was 5 million birds passed over Louisville, Kentucky in one night. And I say this to say it's this mysterious thing that we're not even aware of. But the tree selections you make matter. Instead of going with some species and others, we can help this number go up. Very subtle choices can bring enormous wildlife diversity to your community and make folks feel like they live somewhere wild. because it's already happening around us. So that's what this park is aimed to do, is pick that up and then bring us to lots of trails that bring you to experiences like this. Small story, y'all been through the rendering exercise like I have too many times. We had the artist do the rendering. We said we wanted turkeys on the path. The first version, the turkeys were about this tall. And that's when I said, okay, we have a disconnect with nature we need to work on here. I don't think this person had ever seen a turkey. So I saved that rendering to make a point later, but yeah, so this is really the deal. And again, you are 20 minutes from 1.2 million people. This wildness has double the population of the state of Wyoming within 20 minutes. So we've got some power and ability on this landscape to shape things. And then we want to make adventure accessible. The Falls of the Ohio is Class 4 whitewater part of the year, Class 2 whitewater other part of the year. There are only 5 cities in the United States with whitewater in them in the top 51. We're one of them. I bet y'all didn't know the U.S. Olympic team comes here twice a year to train at the Falls of the Ohio. It's an invisible resource. Now let's talk about recruitment of people and talent. People want to live somewhere exciting and adventure. Well, we've got it. It's a matter of programming it and turning it on. So this is a wave. This is one of the Class 2 waves at the site that we're going to build access to. This wave is called Thumper. Every surf wave in kayaking has a name. Bambi, there's Bambi and Thumper here. Thumper bottoms out every 5 seconds and makes an audible thump. But this is a surf wave that we can provide access to for the first time. We'll do so next year. And these are scenes from your downtown core. So the river we've turned our back to and thought of as just a commercial corridor. There's a lot more going on there, y'all. That's pretty doggone exciting. And then I do want to really take a moment on this that I usually don't do, but given the audience, I want to come back to it. If you remember, I talked about completing the loop, and the K&I Bridge is a big piece of this. The K&I Bridge has the ability to be purposed for multiple use to this day, rails and trails. And our plan contemplates bringing this in as pedestrian path and allowing it to land in the park, which would complete a 10-kilometer loop between the Big Four Bridge and this one on the Ohio River Greenway on one side, Louisville Loop on the other. And suddenly you've got 5Ks and 10Ks every week. And I've counted them with 5 road crossings. Your police cost, your road closure cost, your inconvenience cost to close off downtown for all these races vanishes. And we suddenly have a programmable asset right in our urban core. We also drop about, I think Dirk probably knows better than me, 20 minutes off of the commute time from New Albany to downtown Louisville if you're going by bike. This is the, whoops, I don't know, I'm sorry, I have a timer in here somehow, but this is the Harahan or the Big River Crossing in Memphis, which is an existing model from Union Pacific Railroad of the exact same designer for the K&I Bridge. So the model is here to work. I say this to this group, the window to do this work is now. I know it's not in the 5-year plans as much as it should be. I'm gonna tell y'all, Secretary Buttigieg is from Indiana and has been on this site. The Biden administration has an interest in addressing urban disparities, urban equality, bringing our urban cores together. And Norfolk Southern probably has some infrastructure projects they'd like to get done. So they may be in a position to talk about horse trading finally. Because if they want a new rail line across Wyoming, it may cost them a shared use bridge in Louisville, Kentucky. So the window for this sort of audacious project that I know has been on everyone's drawing boards for a long time, and a lot of people have talked about it, it feels like it's now. And it feels like it can happen quickly or a window may close for a while. So I share that with your group, knowing your responsibility in your organization, and I'm advocating. That's me kind of cheerleading that voice forward. So at the end of the day, what would this say about all of us if we built the park? I think it would say, this is a city that gets it. This is a city that values place. This is a wild, adventurous area that would complement Waterfront Park, provide an anchor for Clarksville. And on one final transportation corridor, and I apologize, I should have brought in the transportation slide. I didn't do a great job of that. There's about 15 miles of trails within here connecting to the Greenways and Discovery Trail. And then on the road network, per the dollars that were mentioned about the Blackston Mill Broad project, you see this white line right here. This is a major gateway to our park that we've included, that we're working with Kevin on conceptually, is the extension of Clark Boulevard to tie in the Colgate plant and all the work they have going downtown. New road all the way into the park to allow for dense infill, winds through the park as a parkway, and then exit onto New Albany for Main Street. And suddenly you have an Eastern Parkway type amenity connecting these neighborhoods and knitting them all together. And we're going to make an application with the town's help for those dollars to accelerate the environmental permitting to begin exploration of this road and this road design. So you'll see us come to that because that becomes the gateway to this park, much in the same way Cherokee and Shawnee and the Parklands have great park entries for roads and allow roads to come through. So I feel like that was a little scattered, but I wanted to say it at least and get it out there. For more information on us, originpark.org. The next big newsy item we will hear about us is we're up for the READY grant. If you don't know the READY grant, the state of Indiana has taken $500 million from their ARPA funds and is driving those into placemaking projects across the state because the state has realized that you have to be a great place to live if you want people to live there. So we have an application in for $17.8 million that we should hear about by the end of the month. If that grant comes through, we will then kick on a capital campaign, and we're looking to open the first phase of the park in late 2024, early 2025. And the first phase will be about 110 acres, which means it's already bigger than Waterfront Park. So the deal is go, 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 but do so in a unique way that honestly, authentically reflects the values of our community and gets our people outdoors. That's it. That's all I got, Chief.
Back up a slide and talk about the freeway.
Happy to. Silver Creek. Silver Creek is 2/3 the size of Floyd's Fork, but it drains most of southern Indiana, which means it's on a critical path towards becoming bad, like Beargrass Creek, because of just development growth, but it's still good right now. So what we've got is a pilot project we're funding right now to activate 4.5 miles of it as a paddling stream. So we're building an access site at the Blackston Mill access. We're removing a dam here, which I'm happy to talk about later because we have some resistance there. And then a new access site at the mouth of the Ohio. And that'll be paddleable about 120 days a year, the first blue way in southern Indiana. And then when Silver Creek gets too low, just like Floyd's Fork, we have a unique lens. This access down here flips because the Ohio in the summer drops to low levels as well, almost a lake-like. This will suddenly, for the first time, give you access out to the Ohio for paddleboarding and kayaking in the summer months, and gives you direct access to Bambi and Thumper, which are on this structure here for the first time. And that's how we activate those whitewater features. So it has 2 different seasons. That is in, we have construction documents being drawn now. The plans are all done. We're permitted to go with one pickup. We are trying to remove a low-head dam here at Providence Mill. It's an abandoned structure. DNR, Fish and Wildlife are helping us. Unfortunately, the mayor of New Albany has elected to appeal our decision process to DNR. So we've lost a year of construction as we work our way through an appeal process now. But we expect successful resolution of that in May, and then we'll proceed to construction next summer.
Locate the K&I, so they understand how it gets back to.
This is the K9. So there's your Louisville Loop running right along here. You'll know it. And then the Ohio River Greenway runs right through here. Thanks, Kevin.
Any questions of Scott? Thank you very
I
much.
bored everyone. Very good.
Every time I hear the presentation, it changes a little bit. But Scott and his group are doing very good things in southern Indiana. It was very fortunate that they were able to land him and bring him over from the Parklands as his work there was winding up. And so we have a very good leader in the group at River Heritage that'll hopefully bring this to fruition in the coming year. So, all right, moving on. Item number 10, fiscal year 2020 to 2025 transportation improvement program. Nick.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. This is an administrative modification 23. These are minor changes to existing projects or adding new, what we call group projects that are also considered minor changes. A lot of these changes here are related to the situation in Indiana in fiscal year 2022 with the unprogrammed balance of about $800,000. One of the ways we reduce that down to $800,000 is to, you guys might remember 3, 4, 5 months ago, we got CRISA funds, their COVID Stimulus Act funds, and we were able to give every kind of community in Southern Indiana a portion of that funding that we received. Those dollars are flexible. So again, in Indiana, you can't carry over from one year to the next, but with CRISA funds, they're flexible for 3 years. So we had some CRISA funds programmed in fiscal year 2022, and by moving those out to 2023, it reduces the unprogrammed need by about $400,000. So a lot of what you see in this packet are those changes. And yep, Bridge 51. And then the Waterston Trail, Jeffersontown cost increase. So that comprises all of the administrative modification changes. I can take any questions or comments. There's no action on this item.
questions for Nick? All right, thank you, Nick.
Thanks, everybody.
Item number 11 on the agenda, other business, any other business to come before the board?
Kevin, I might mention that the Regional Transportation Council meeting is going on right now in this room out here. That's where the board meeting will be at 11. As far as I know, they're still going on. So if you're going to leave immediately after this meeting, I guess ask you to leave through the front door and then hang out for a few more minutes after this meeting. We can talk and just talk amongst yourselves. Once that meeting's over, we'll go in there and have some snacks and then board meeting at 11 o'clock. And then lunch is going to be served, Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, immediately after the board meeting for those that stick around for the board meeting.
All right, next meeting and dates.
Next meeting will be our regularly scheduled meeting in December, or excuse me, in January. There will not be a meeting in December. There will not be a meeting of our TPC nor our TTCC in December. So we will get back together with you folks on 4th Thursday of January, back presumably in a hybrid format. We're gonna keep the hybrid format going at least for as long as we need to. So love to see everybody in the building and hopefully we can do this more often, all in person, but you're welcome to join us via Zoom. Just a second. So appreciate everybody showing up today. Thank you very much for coming.
Well, thank you, Mayor Dura, for inviting us into J-Town and this facility. So if you are so inclined to stay for the board meeting afterwards, please do. Also stay for lunch. We welcome you. There will be a changing of the guard of the board as we do each year at this time. So if there's nothing else, then I will adjourn the meeting at 10:26. So thank you, everyone.